Finally, one last thing I wanted to impart so that you don't look like a crazy dumb tourist is Hi friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Larissa and I'm here to tell you some things you absolutely need to know if you're planning your first trip to Tokyo. Bonus points if you are traveling solo, like I did. I have got my matcha, the official drink of Japan. And we're going to get into those tips right now. So first thing first, let's talk about when to go. I ended up being in Japan in the dead middle of summer in the month of July, which was a little bit rough. It was extremely hot and humid. I would call it something similar to probably like the southern parts of the United States. And it was also pretty rainy, which made it kind of difficult to see a lot of the popular tourist destinations because a lot of the shrines and temples and stuff like that are outside. So just keep that in mind when planning your trip. Although there are plenty of like summer festivals and things like that, which does make it kind of interesting to see those throughout their time in Japan as well. It's pretty popular to travel in spring, specifically because of the cherry blossoms, and also it's pretty popular to travel in fall because of fall foliage. I think that that's something that you mostly would experience like outside of Tokyo proper though. Like I think Kyoto and stuff like that are probably pretty beautiful in fall, so it's definitely high up on my list to visit outside of Tokyo, specifically in the fall. And as far as winter goes, it does get pretty cold in Japan. I can't tell you exactly how cold, but I do know that up in the northern parts of Japan, it's really beautiful when you can go to some of the ski and snowboarding resorts and stuff like that. So seasonally, just take your pick. As far as transportation goes, Japan is an excellent city for public transportation and taking the subway, like the underground or whatever else you want to call it. You're going to get something called a Suica card. You've probably heard this mentioned all over whatever, but it's super simple. And if you've taken public transportation in London, you've taken public transportation in New York, you will easily get away with getting yourself to where you need to get to go, specifically in Tokyo. The lines are all mentioned in Japanese and in English in bold letters, as well as color coded. And also all the tourist sites are going to be like along pretty simple paths to get to where you need to go, like within central Tokyo. The Suica card, for me, it just popped up as soon as I got there. It was like, did you want to download your Suica card or whatever, like into your Apple Wallet? And I just said yes. So I cannot tell you that that was a difficult process for me at all, but it's very similar to anything like within your Apple Wallet. You like add a certain amount of money onto it. It's really easy as long as you have your cards accessible and stuff to add things onto your Suica card. The actual train stations themselves are the cleanest ever experienced in any public transportation that I've taken all over the world. Super organized, nothing even smells that bad, which if you've been in a New York subway, then you know that there can be some really suspicious smells that you just never really wanted entering into your nostrils. The train cars themselves are smaller, I would say, than most other places, and they do get pretty packed, so don't be surprised, especially if you're in areas like Shinjuku or Shibuya, especially around rush hour. You're gonna be pretty packed in pretty tight to a lot of those train cars. And you've even probably seen videos and stuff of people kind of like there's like operators like shoving people deeper into the train cars. And in Japan, in Tokyo specifically, that's just a common occurrence. Don't get super weirded out by it. It does happen. Something to note etiquette-wise is it's really common and easily understood that you should turn your backpack around to like your front side so you're not impeding on anybody's personal space or anything like that when you do have like a backpack on the train. Also, it's very commonly understood that you should not under any circumstances take a seat from elderly person and or a pregnant woman. It's much more common and an etiquette thing there to like get up when you see an elderly person get on the train if there aren't any other seats available. So just be aware of that and you'll have a super easy time. Just a couple more points as far as getting around. Google Maps works really well in Japan, so much so to where they even have like 3D kind of like renderings. You put in a destination and they'll show you the building that you're looking for within your Google Maps steps. Also, Google Translate works really well. So a lot of people speak English, but if you ever wanted to use Google Translate, that's really important. I don't usually do eSIMs or anything like that just because like T-Mobile is pretty good about their travel packages within their phone service plans. So I just did like a data extension pack, but it is pretty important because you will be using your phone for everything in Japan. I wouldn't suggest that you take many Ubers. Uber is really expensive. I did end up having to do that to get from one hotel to the other because I just didn't want to lug a giant suitcase, and one of the hotels I was staying at was like a bit a ways from the other. So that Uber itself, I believe, was like $40, which is, you know, on the expensive side when you're trying to kind of stay on a budget. So Uber and taxis are definitely the more expensive option, and I wouldn't suggest taking them when you're in Japan or Tokyo. So typically when you're in Tokyo, the most popular language that's going to be spoken is going to be Japanese. Japan is a pretty isolated place for lots of history, so it didn't really get as much of the United States culture as some of the other countries that might be popular to travel to. So a lot of people, especially a lot of elderly people, still only speak Japanese. A lot of the younger people that I did encounter speak English, or at least some form of English, but I'm telling you, it's still pretty easy to communicate what you need to communicate. I don't feel like it was super difficult. There's English signs written everywhere, so that's just something to note. The currency in Japan is the yen, which actually right now is a really good time to go to Japan because the yen is actually not as strong as it has been in previous years, which means that you don't have to be spending as much. I would not say that Tokyo and Japan, in particular Tokyo, are really budget travel destinations because there's also just so many things you can do, but I will say that you can kind of find things within any budget, especially when it comes to things like eating out. The yen can really go far for you. So let's talk about where you're going to want to stay. Tokyo itself has so many options when it comes to accommodation styles. There's Airbnbs, there's hostels, there's capsule hotels, there's themed hotels, there's standardized chain hotels like you'll find anywhere in the world. But for me personally, I wanted to stay away from some of those standardized chain hotels, and so I picked two major areas that I wanted to stay in. I stayed in Akihabara, which is known as like the video game district, and I stayed in a train station themed hotel, but it wasn't really a theme. It was more like it was called Under the Train Station because it was literally built into underneath the train. Like, can you hear that? That's the train. This hotel is called Under the Train Station Hotel or something like that in Akihabara. And they literally meant it. Like, you can hear the train going every like 5 minutes or so. And I stayed in another hotel called a Onsen hotel, and that was in Asakusa, which Asakusa is like a place where there's a lot of like temples, there's like some really good eateries, so I figured that would be a cool opportunity because I really, really wanted to get the chance to go to an onsen, so I stayed at a hotel that had an onsen on property. An onsen is like a hot thermal bath where you can just like really luxuriate. It's very like seeped deep into Japanese culture. I stayed in Tokyo for a lot less time this time, so I wanted to see an onsen within the city, so that hotel was really, really cool. And also the other place I stayed, this was only for one night, but I stayed at a capsule hotel that was actually at the Haneda airport. The capsule hotels themselves are like small kind of cubby style hotels. Personally, I'm a huge fan of them. I feel like capsule hotels should be everywhere because why are there not capsule hotels at all airports? That's just, especially all big international airports, but I digress. It was a cool experience. It was a little bit difficult only in the sense that you can hear your neighbors. So like there was one neighbor, like they have all these things written where you shouldn't make noise, you have all these rules or whatever, and there's like male and female dorms, but I could hear my neighbor snoring. So I was like, what do I even do in this context? Like, I'm a really light sleeper, but regardless, the capsule hotel was a cool experience, and you can really run the gambit when it comes to what kind of accommodations you're going to pick when you're staying in Japan. It's not the cheapest place to stay, nor do I believe that there's as many hostels as you might find in other places in like Central Europe or Western Europe and things like that. But there are some hostels, as well as there are definitely Airbnbs, so you really just have your pick when it comes to choosing where to stay. Two of the popular places to stay are going to be Shibuya and Shinjuku, which are also pretty centralized. Obviously, Shibuya is very famous because of something like Shibuya's Crossing or some more of the shrines and things like that. But I just felt like in those areas specifically, it felt very touristy, and also the hotels themselves seemed like they're just kind of like classic American chains, and I didn't want to stay somewhere that I could stay anywhere in the world. Like, I really wanted to stay somewhere that was unique to Japan, which was like an onsen hotel, capsule hotels, things like that. I had to do a re-up on my matcha latte because I'm literally addicted to matcha. But let's talk about safety. I'm gonna be honest and say that Japan and Tokyo were one of the safest places I've ever felt as a solo traveler. It is known to be a pretty safe country. There is not really a lot of crime when it comes to what happens with tourists. I think there's obviously always gonna be things like pickpockets, but it's super high up on solo travel lists because of that reason specifically. Now, I told you guys I was gonna tell you some more about the solo travel aspect, and so I'll get into that now. Japan is a great destination to go to if you're prepared for your first solo trip. It's a little bit far, so your trip might be a little bit longer, but when it comes to activities, it's a really good country that won't make you feel like you're alone, but will still not ostracize you for being alone, if that makes sense. When I think about that in specifics, I think about the fact that restaurants, hotels, all of it is kind of set up for a solo traveler. And by that I mean, a lot of the time when you're booking hotels, you get a really big space, but in Japan, it's super easy to book something that's a lot more compact, that you see that and you even wonder, how do two people even stay here? You've heard Japanese hotel rooms aren't the biggest, and this is true. This is technically for two people, but it was a decent sized bed, but the room really was only fit for kind of one person, one suitcase. And when it comes to eating, a lot of the restaurants will either have like solo table kind of options, or you can like sit at a sushi bar and like you won't feel as ostracized as you might if you were like going to dinner specifically by yourself. I mean, I don't feel like that anymore because I travel so often by myself. I just enjoy my own company. But if you are just getting used to solo travel, it is a great place to do that. Now, I didn't stay at a hostel, so I can't necessarily speak to what that experience would have been in terms of socializing, but in Japan, people don't really mess with you. And honestly, specifically in Tokyo, nobody even like stared, or it didn't feel weird or out of place that I was there. I think it's because it's such an international city that although I don't at all look like a local, I was not uncommon for people to have seen in Tokyo. I think that would be different if I left Tokyo specifically, because then it wouldn't have been as international. But yeah, honestly, I felt completely safe. I was able to be walking alone at night, never really got messed with. So Japan definitely up there at the top, if not number one, as far as solo travel cities, especially for women solo travelers. What did I do with my time in Tokyo, Japan? The better question is, what did I not do? Tokyo has so many options of things that you can do in all a pretty close radius. You can really pack in your days. Some of the highlights were going to a sumo show. I booked it with Viator. My link is going to be in the bio, so make sure you check that out. Sumo itself is a traditional Japanese sort of a combination of like a sport and an art form, and so there's so much that goes into it. So the sumo show that I went to wasn't like a traditional sumo show where you don't really understand what's going on and it's very like serious and intense and stuff like that. I went to more of like a lighthearted family show, which actually ended up being extremely cool because I was able to learn more about sumo and have it be explained in a more informal setting, and it came with like a lunch and things like that. So definitely check out that link. I went to a pig cafe, a mini pig cafe. I had seen that place for a very long time, and I was like, I need to go see little pigs. So I saw those, which were so cute and such a fun time to kind of just like sit there, and like you get about 30 minutes or an hour depending on which one you pay for, but make sure you book it in advance. There's a couple mini pig cafes now, but the one I went to was in Harajuku. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of temples and things to visit, like Meiji Shrine and things like that. I also did a traditional tea making ceremony where I actually learned how to make a traditional Japanese tea, as well as wore a kimono, which was a really, really cool experience. And kimonos are such an intricate thing to kind of put on, and there's a lot of symbolism in the kimono, so it's not like you can just like put one on and just like, you know, everything is very like symbolic and respectful and delicate and intricate when it comes to Japanese culture. So that was really beautiful. The tea ceremony itself was just like traditional, so we sat in like a crisscross position, and the instructor, like there was no videos and no like barely any photography allowed, and the instructor told us how to have a traditional tea and like invite somebody into your home and like all of these beautiful things. And so I kind of took away, we didn't make matcha lattes, which I definitely would have done a matcha latte class, but we did do traditional tea. Obviously I shopped a lot, so I definitely know the best destinations when it comes to shopping. You really want to spend some time in Omotesando, but Harajuku's right next door, but I feel like honestly Harajuku kind of felt underwhelming. There wasn't as much to do. It's all very like kitschy and very like it's very tourist friendly. There's lots of animal cafes. It wasn't really, I mean, I feel like Harajuku maybe used to be kind of cooler. You could see more people dressed up or something like that, but I didn't have that experience, so I wouldn't spend a lot of time there. But in Omotesando specifically, there is a really cool shopping center where you can go up to the top of it, and it's got this like really cool open air garden type of thing, and it's free. And there's also this, I think when you go up to the 4th floor in Omotesando, and there's the Tokyo Plaza, I believe it's called, when there's all these like independent vendors that are selling these really cool niche kind of crafts. And I guess that's like more of my style, because I specifically like to buy things that I know are going to be distinct to that place. So I bought a piece of pottery from a guy who does his own Japanese pottery. So many different like cool streetwear brands as well that you can find. I believe I also shopped some in Shinjuku. There's lots of thrifting that you can do. Surprisingly, actually, a lot of the thrifting is going to be like American clothing, but really good vintage pieces from American clothing. Like I found a pair of jeans there. Like there's just so much shopping you can do. And also the flagship stores of all of the Onitsuka tiger stores are there, which the Onitsukas have been like super popular when it comes to like fashion girlies and things like that, specifically the yellow Mexico 66s. But there's every single Onitsuka you could ever want there, and it's also cheaper. So take it from me, check out the Onitsuka stores. And something that I didn't get a chance to do was to check out the theme parks. There's so many theme parks in and around Tokyo. There's Universal, there's the Disney Tokyo Sea, so that's something else to do. Like I said, you will not be sitting in Tokyo like, oh, I'm so bored, I wonder what I should do. There's so many things to do in Tokyo, so take heed of that. But also note that it's super popular. There's also all the Dream Labs and Tokyo Tower, and there's just like 1,000 different things to see and do. But also Tokyo is extremely popular as a city, and I'm gonna venture to say like not just in summer, like year round. So book your trip out pretty far in advance. Like I wouldn't say it's the type of place where you should just go and kind of like vibe it out. Like I think a lot of these places need to have reservations pretty far out in advance. So I've been yapping you guys' ears off, but I just feel so passionate in talking about my time in Tokyo because I want you guys to have the best trip ever. As I end this video, I'm just going to give you a couple rapid fire general information tips. These are really things that you're going to want to know. Starting with number 1, take a portable charger. Your phone is going to be everything when it comes to your time staying in Tokyo, because you're going to find directions, book reservations, pay for things, like everything is going to be on your phone. So if your phone is dead, you're pretty much a sitting duck. Now, it's going to be easy to like find Wi-Fi and things like that when you go to different cafes. Number 2, food is so good in Tokyo. You're going to want to use the app called Tablelog, I believe. You're not going to find as many popular like reviews when it comes to sites like Google, when you're just like Googling restaurants. Not a lot of people use Yelp. So just know that like if you're going to want to find like the best eats, then you're going to definitely want to check out Tablelog. There is also like tiers when it comes to quality. Like I really love sushi, so I wanted to make sure that I got like as much sushi as I could. And so one of the days I went to a revolving sushi place where like they have it literally revolving, and another day I went to like a beautiful like fancy high class sushi bar in Omotesando where they like hand make every roll with your own personal chef, and they serve you each a piece of sushi. So like I said, a range of experiences. There's so many things. There's Wagyu beef, there's, you know, it's clear that like a lot of time and intentionality goes into crafting the foods in Japan, as well as like making sure the quality of the ingredients are really top tier. Oh, before I finish out on the food point, I gotta tell you guys about Japanese convenience stores. Lawson's, 7-Eleven, these are gonna come in so clutch, because sometimes you're just like right in between weird times, you don't want to eat a full meal, whatever. These are not normal convenience stores. You've probably seen all the what I bought at the convenience store in Japan, all these videos or whatever, but just note that that's not just like one area, whatever. That's like all the convenience stores in Japan are just gonna have like the best snacks and a lot of hot food options. And it's not like when you go here where you're like, how long has that hot dog been sitting there? Like, no, it's all really good, really fresh food, ramen, all that stuff you can find at the convenience stores. I am still craving an onigiri. I wish I could have taken more back with me, because it's just so easy to pick up fresh food that's actually good for you in convenience stores in Tokyo. Finally, one last thing I wanted to impart so that you don't look like a crazy dumb tourist is make sure that you mind your manners. Respect in Japan is absolutely top tier. It comes in even with like religion, because I was learning this, right? Shinto religion includes a lot of things that talk about cleanliness and respect. And so this is way deeper than just a loose idea. Like, this is cultural. So the couple things that I specifically don't want you to do to look like a stupid tourist, one of those is no shoes inside anywhere ever. Like, I mean, obviously be mindful of like the building that you're in, but if it's anybody's residence, if it's anybody, like if they have a hotel has like tatami mats, which are like these mats that are kind of on the floor, not really rugs, you'll know when you see a tatami mat, or you see shoes at the door. Don't be a stupid American tourist. Don't worry about your feet. It's not about that. Just be respectful and take off your shoes. I even saw a lady fussing at a mom and a young child on the train because he got in and he put his shoes on the seat on the subway, and she did not know these people at all, and she was like, no, 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 no. So be mindful. Don't put your shoes anywhere inside. That's like seen as like the ultimate sign of disgust. Also, this was one that I learned that was a little more niche, but when you're eating from a bowl, mostly bowls, because chopsticks wouldn't stand up on a plate. But when you're eating from a bowl, make sure you never like finish eating and just stick your chopsticks straight up. That's seen as like a rude gesture. And I think it's also, I'm not quite sure, you guys, honestly, because you know, everyone on the internet knows everything, so you guys can list below and tell me more details on why. But it's rude to like stick your chopsticks straight up. It's like a funeral custom or something like that. So don't do that with your chopsticks as well.
Editing Larissa here, just to tell you that it is actually not only rude, but also bad luck. It has an affiliation with Japanese funerals, where a bowl of rice is usually left for the dead, and the chopsticks are stuck upright into the rice. They remind people of the incense burned during funerals.
The Japanese people that I came across were so kind and so welcoming. Most people kind of stick to their own, but if you ask any questions, like, people are really willing to help you, and it's a beautiful place to be. That's all I have for you guys as far as tips and tricks. I just wanted to say arigato for watching today's video, and comment down below if you're headed to Japan soon, or if it's on your travel destination list. Sayonara!